Well, here we are for another Journey podcast live. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by a friend of mine and an associate of mine, probably more a friend than associate, but maybe an associate more than a friend, but whatever. I know Tim quite well. So Tim's going to talk to us today about his entrepreneurial journey. And what I would say is slightly different about this today is that Tim is in the middle of this journey. Quite often, as some of you'll know, I've interviewed a lot of people, hundreds of people over the years, but very often they've already made it. They've already, they've turned up for the interview in the Lamborghini or whatever. But what's different here is that Tim's in the middle of this journey, which makes it a lot more raw and a lot more real, rather than the people that we see them, don't we, sometimes, the Dragon's Den type interviews. And, I started out in 1976 and I had only one shoe on and didn't eat more than a banana a day and things like that. Well, that's all very well, but a lot of people want to know what's it like in the eye of the storm rather than when you're on the other side of the storm. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to have a chat about the experience of being an entrepreneur. I'll throw in my pennyworth from some of my experiences, and hopefully you'll get some value from it. So that's it. So we'll just do the intro and then we'll crack on. Okay, so this is Tim Mullock, and I think we deserve this for this Tim. Because I know as an ex-footballer, you used to love that kind of cheering back in the crowd. Take you back, bit of nostalgia. So tell me, Tim, tell me about Kiistone. Tell me a little bit about you and everybody watching.
Well, thanks ever so much, Phil, for having me on. I'm chuffed to be on, and it makes a change to have our chats recorded. So we'll have to be careful we don't have our normal chats, but.
But to be fair, Tim, it was never proven with that incident with that squirrel and that dog. It was never proven in a court of law. So you're innocent until proven guilty. Continue.
But what a video it would have made, eh?
Absolutely.
So I've been in the building trade for the last 20 years in different guises, but basically for the last 15, I've always worked for myself, and certainly in the last decade, I've really seen the decline in quality of the work that's being produced by people. And I've met numerous customers that have been let down and seen the horror stories firsthand. And, but also conversely, I've worked with a lot of great guys who've had late or non-payments that have meant they're going home at night worried about how they're going to pay the mortgage and the stress that goes with it. And things came to a head about 4 years ago when a good friend of mine nearly lost his business, nearly lost his house. And about the same time, I had exactly the same thing happen where a friend of mine asked me to go and look at a job where a family had been literally left with the backside of the house open to the elements with no kitchen in. And, obviously whoever had done the job had got no conscience and just fired off and left them. And part of the problem is that people don't realise is that you think the court process will sort everything out, and it just doesn't. On average now it takes 11 months to get a county court judgment, and then even if you get that judgment, there's nothing to say that you're ever going to be able to recoup the money that's been lost. And you think to yourself, could you live a year in your home with it upside down with no end in sight? And I think one of the things for me in my journey, certainly building Kiistone and any other bad day, is that you'd always hope that however bad your day is, you still get to come home, close the door on it, and just get a bit of respite from what's going on and a bit of headspace. But that's the thing, is that you can't do that when your home's upside down. And especially if you've got no money then to try and get the problem fixed, it's like your world's collapsing around you. So I wanted to try and do something about it. I spoke to a good solicitor friend of mine, and he was like, well, the legal side of things obviously can help, but a lot of tradespeople don't always provide contracts. And And the other thing is sometimes that those contracts still, if the builder winds up the company, I'm using builder as a generic tradesperson term, obviously, then those contracts don't mean anything anyway, So I wanted to try and find a format whereby I could give structure and accountability to the situation where you've got somebody in your home doing work for you. And also from a tradesperson's point of view, make sure that if you're doing the work, the customer's got the money and you're going to get paid. And my way of doing this was I latched onto what's called escrow, whereby basically a bank holds, like when you're buying a house and you put a deposit down with your solicitor, it's the same thing. Monies are put in up front to secure whatever service you're after, i.e. a kitchen fit or something like that. But what Kiistone does is it's making escrow more flexible. Normally in escrow, you just put a lump sum of money up and draw a lump sum down when you get the result you want. My issue with that is if you're having a job done and extras are added or something doesn't turn up on time and the job's elongated, then the problem is that money's trapped for too long a period. And both the customer and the tradesperson need to know that they can alter that amount and, change the variables in any given home improvement. And that's what Kiistone does. It offsets amounts of money against specific tasks. The tradesperson ticks the tax off by doing the work properly. When the customer's satisfied, they're able to release that amount of money to the tradesperson and they move on to the next stage. So it's all safeguarding, really.
It's a cracking idea, and I suspect that there's a lot of people listening or watching to this at the moment that can relate to this problem. And if they can't relate to the problem, they will at some point. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm one. I think I've told you when we first met, and I had this situation with an extension I was having on the house that was when I was living down south, and oh, what a performance! And it's a very emotional. Your home is a very, very important, very integral part of your life on so many different levels. And it's in a very, very, very emotional place in so many different ways. So obviously you came up with the idea, but what I would say is impressive, and I don't blow smoke up your ass very often, but what's very impressive is the fact that you were one of those people who actually went out and did something about it. Because we've all come across those people, friends and relatives, who I'm gonna, coulda, woulda, and all those kind of things, but they don't actually ever go and do it. Oh, I had that idea 4 years ago. I could have been a millionaire now. Yeah, but you're not, because you didn't do anything about it, did you? And that's very common. So where did you find the kind of, was it a burning passion and desire to do it, which meant that you just felt that you just had to do something about it and take the action?
I think there were two things ringing in my ears, really. One is, the most recent statistic has actually gone up. The recent statistic is that 56% of all people having home improvement work done, it won't be done satisfactorily, and it'll incur remedial costs of over 1,000. So if you think 1 in 2 people in the country is going to be affected by it, that's an insane statistic. And the other one is that the construction industry is the worst industry for people for suicide, unfortunately. And
wow.
A construction worker supposedly takes the life every single day. And I've had my own battles over the years in the construction industry where the stress is getting to me and you feel like, is it worth it, and money problems and things like this. But to have that push somebody to the brink where they feel like the only way out is to take their own life, it's just disgusting that we're not doing something on a bigger scale about it. Charities are doing fantastic work to try and alleviate it, but Kiistone for me is so vital, because as a bare minimum, the worst case scenario in any given situation, whether you're the tradesperson or you're the customer, you know the money's safe. So one way or another, it's worth working through the problem. You know, it's not like somebody can withhold their end of things and have you over a barrel anymore. So for me, it was, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of a romantic, and maybe, maybe I just wanted to try and do something a bit different. But it was kind of like just steps in the journey that at first it started out as a curiosity, and then it just got to the stage where you're moving through different steps, meeting different people, having different conversations, to the point where it becomes tangible. And that's when you've got to start pulling people in to try and make you realize it. And that was really the start of the journey for me. And obviously a lot of things have happened in between, that some of them you've been a part of. And it's certainly one thing that we've always said is what you start out as being at the start, you sure as heck aren't later on throughout the journey, because of what you learn, because of the experiences you have. It's certainly, it's funny when you call me an entrepreneur, it doesn't sound right, because to me, I'm just somebody that's trying something. You know, to me, entrepreneurs are like Richard Branson, and whatever they do, they seem to turn it into something special. But it's certainly the case that you've got to be resilient, because the only way you can survive is to keep solving the problems. And that's where I think I've been lucky, in that being a project manager, having a building company, because the buck stops with you, you have to find an answer, because if there isn't an answer, you're not getting paid and the problem isn't getting solved. And that's what Kiistone and my journey's been for me. It's like, sometimes you've just got to suck it up when you're staring at a brick wall, and you've either got to decide to walk away from it, or you've got to go, right, I'm going to solve the problem again. And before,
I think I see, because there's a lot of debate quite often about this whole area of what's an entrepreneur and what's a business owner. You know, what's a lifestyle business versus an entrepreneur? And of course, it makes me smile sometimes, because people do refer to themselves as entrepreneurs, and they've got two people. The scalability is a big word. And I always think that an entrepreneur for me is somebody who's developing something that has the potential to scale to a significant level to make a difference on a much wider market. And the vast majority of businesses, of course, and this doesn't make it, it's not a bad thing, but vast majority of businesses are lifestyle businesses, or the businesses that will potentially make the owner or the directors a reasonable living, and maybe a very good living. And I think that's the difference. And I guess the other element quite often is it's something new or different is usually quite a key. It's not exact science, but that for me is the key thing. So in the past, I've been an entrepreneur. At the moment, I would say I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a small business owner. But then I'm always looking for the next opportunity, and I will probably become an entrepreneur again when I think of the thing, that's going to fix everybody's problems, and then I can get that Lamborghini. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about, because there's so many elements to this. It's like, where do you start? But I thought I'd start with what you might call, what they don't tell you at Harvard Business School when you become an entrepreneur, that kind of thing. The theory versus the reality. Because I've said to you before, and I've said it on this show before, that there's a lot of romance around it. People get the idea that, I'll be Richard Branson, or I'll be Mark Zuckerberg a week on Tuesday. But of course, it's usually very, very different. So what were some of the things that you've experienced in terms of, I'm thinking about things like, I've made some notes before when I knew we were doing this, and I was putting things like the negative side, like loneliness, frustration, pain, a great creator of insomnia, emotional, embarrassing, gives your ego a good kick in. You get the drift. So anything that you can think of that would you say like the downsides that maybe you underestimated when you started?
Oh, I think probably sometimes the naivety of what you're getting into protects you, because if you were fully aware of the things you might go through, you may never do it, you know.
Yeah.
But I think one night I thought I was putting an inspirational video on Facebook to just say, look, when things are bad, don't worry, just keep your head down, keep going, have a good night's sleep, tomorrow's a better day. And apparently the video, because I filmed it in my van when it was going dusk, looked so bad. And all my friends and family texted me messages, are you all right? Are you sure you're okay? And so I must have looked pretty low at that point. And it gets you like that, because the problem is there's not always going to be people to share the journey with you. You know, the chances of somebody, even, I mean, my wife, my family, I'd even say my kids have been fantastic with putting up with the amount I'm on the phone, the hours I do, being tired when it's something special. But to a degree, I'm very conscious that almost the addiction I've got to making Kiistone work, I've got to keep separate from my family, because I want them to be happy and going on with their normal lives and not going on the same roller coaster as me. But by the same token, that insulation that you do to yourself then means you're putting a brave face on a lot. Like we said, when you go home, the place where you want to take your brain out and just switch off for a bit and recharge, you start finding you can't do that anymore, because you're having to put a face on when you go home now to protect the ones you love as well from the negatives. And I think the resilience comes at the start. I just thought, I'm a builder. What do I know about software or scaling a business? Or all I could see, and this is relative to a lot of tradespeople as well, all I could see were a lot of rules and regulations that I might know about that are going to trip me up, make me lose money, end me up in a world of trouble. And so I tried to get as much advice as I could from business mentors. Now, the one thing I would say that I've learned, I was very lucky with certain people that I had on my journey. I was certainly unlucky with some people that I had as well. But I wouldn't change a thing, because what it does is it hardens you to certain situations, and it also gives you a filter for when people aren't telling you the truth. Do you like how politically correct, by the way, I said that, as opposed to...
It's like you said, it can tell it's live and we're recording it.
So the thing I would say that you won't get told in business school or anything like this is, you at no point should be a passenger in your journey. And by that, I mean, yes, you need the advice of experts, but just be aware, I certainly put those experts on pedestals and thought that I didn't need to watch them, because they were cracking on my behalf. You know, I was paying them, they were professional, they're looking after me. And it wound me up in a world of trouble, and it's lost me a lot of money, many sleepless nights, stress. But ultimately, I still say that was my fault, because I had to learn that you, as the entrepreneur, as the person who's driving your dream, you've got to take responsibility for those people and continually ask, where are you up to? What are you doing? When people are giving you quotes, make sure you dial into the detail of what you're being given, because you need to understand the stages, the processes that are going to get to you to a certain point that you want. And if you don't understand the devil in the detail, you can't hold them accountable when things start to go sideways. You know, you're well past the point of gathering back a problem, because you're up to your neck in it before you realize it.
Yeah.
That's not to scare people. It's just to go. I've always kind of had the attitude from my football days and the people that I was lucky to meet in that journey, that everybody works the same. you know, everybody looks the same when they're going to the toilet and the pants are down. You know, it's everybody at the end of the day has a bad day and they just want to go to bed and shut the door. And you've got to make sure you don't put these people on pedestals, that you respect them, but you also need to appreciate that if they're giving you that advice, their advice has limitations. And especially if you're doing something that's completely new, they can't possibly advise you on everything because they haven't been there. You know, they'll have experienced a journey, but it isn't your journey. And you've got
to be fair as well, we do live in a huge blame culture, don't we, in the UK? I mean, it's probably the same in other countries, but particularly in the UK, it seems that we need a scapegoat. We need somebody to blame for everything. And the media kind of drive that as well. And if we're really honest, it can be easier on an emotional and psychological level to pass, you know, oh, it was their fault, it was their fault, it was their fault. I think it's very interesting you should say that. And I do think it's a part of what almost like reaching a certain part of maturity in an entrepreneurial journey, when you realize that everything at the end of the day, the buck stops with the owner and the entrepreneur. And it's not easy to accept and it's not easy to take on board, but it is fair to say it's pretty true as well.
Well, the irony for me, sorry, mate, was that that's what I've had to do from 21 years old. The book always stuck with me and I was happy to take that responsibility. But then all of a sudden I try and do something new and it's almost like all the lessons I learned went out the window because I didn't respect the fact that I come with my own experiences, I come with my own knowledge. And instead I was too busy going, oh, tell me how I'm going to do this, instead of like trying to connect it to my bag of tricks and, you know, leading it yourself, you know.
Yeah, it's also, I think, the relative newness of what you've been doing or the relative newness of the business. It's not like you can say, look, I've produced this prototype pen. It's a prototype. I just want it to look a bit nicer. So just produce me one of those. And they can't just take it apart and say, right, okay, yeah, spring, yeah, okay, little top there, yeah. You're almost, to a point, I think, and I'm interested to get your view on this, but to a point, you're almost asking people to delve into your imagination.
Yeah.
In a way.
And we've always said people buy into people. You know, if you've got to make people believe in what you're doing. And, you know, there's a couple of things that spring to mind is that during the building of Kiistone, I got badly let down and lost a lot of money through trusting somebody I shouldn't. And they took great delight in saying to me, you could have done with Kiistone. So using my own concept against me, which makes me know that not just in the building trade, you know, what we've built will be able to help people in other industries. But my biggest problem, Phil, to be honest, is that my wife has always said to me, you set goals for yourself. And your problem is by the time you start getting close to the goal, you've already set another one. So you don't celebrate the goals you've achieved. My head's already gone past. So it's almost like I'm constantly going forward. And it's like now the software, due to a fantastic new team. And when I say new team, I feel like I've got great people around me in all areas now. This new team has allowed me to get the software to where I want it to be, to where I trust it, to where I know it can. It's a big statement, but I know that this software right now will protect people. It'll change people's lives if it saves them the stress and the heartache of the home being damaged, the money not being paid so you can't pay your mortgage and stuff like that. It will literally stop that statistic of somebody dying every day. And if it helps one person, it's done its job. But going back to what you said about the getting people to believe in what it is. I'm trying now to really focus on making people believe in what it is right now. I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really want to be. I was just hoping people would adopt it and off we run, because my head's already on the next 3 stages that are going to make an even bigger difference. And, you know, it goes back to that analogy of people all the way along. People have shown me this damn picture that I'm sick of, to be honest, of, you know, the little guy with a pick mining away.
Acres of diamonds, it's called.
Towards a diamond.
Yeah, acres of diamonds. It's a story.
That's it. And at some point, you know, and then obviously the analogy is don't stop just before you get to it. But for some reason, because of the way my brain's wired, I ended up thinking, well, hang on, if that's one diamond and you're going towards it, you might completely miss it down either side of it, you know. And that's, to me, that's the entrepreneurial journey. If you're aiming for one diamond, you're setting yourself up to fail. Whereas the chances are, where there's one diamond, there'll be more. Yeah. So you've got to keep going until the point where, right, this isn't working. I need to tweak this. I might turn left, or I might turn right. You know,
there's a saying in business, isn't there? And, you know, build it. It's been around for a long, long time. Build it and they will come. No, they won't. And that's one of the biggest, and it's one of those strange things, because there's something very exciting and exhilarating about producing something that's new or a bit different in the market, or it isn't saturated in the market. So at the moment, as you know, I'm kind of doing video and audio podcasting and live stream and training and coaching. It's not an area that's well served at the moment. I think it will become one, because I think it's going to explode. Already is, arguably. But it's quite tricky, because when you're in that situation, you're not just trying to sell it, you're trying to sell the concept.
Yeah.
So it's like, as I go back to the pen analogy, it's not like, do you want to buy this pen? It's better than the other pens. It's right, we've got this thing and it does this and it does that. So they've got to buy into the concept in the first place before they even think about whether your thing is the thing to buy. Yeah. And it's another level of communication, another level of influencing people, which adds, which of course at the end of the day, in truth, actually elongates the time it takes, and also then very often elongates the bloody money it costs to actually get there.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you know, I'm not just saying this, you know, to big you up at your end, but you were the first person right at the start to say, do you not want to step back from this? This ball's rolling a bit quick at the start. How much research have you done to make sure that people actually want a solution to the problem? And it's a bit like a conversation I've had with my wife a few times. It's like, I'm not asking you to solve the problem. I just want you to listen.
Yeah. Well, I think with us males, we've all been there. I think
it's like, oh, so you want me to sit here and be quiet because you normally tell me off for that as well, kind of thing. But
you're not figured out you can't win yet.
Mate, I've just got this mindset. You know, you chuck enough balls, you're bound to hit a coconut. But it's that thing of just because there's a serious problem in the industry that you're looking to solve, don't just assume that people want you to solve it. And this is a big part of the issue that I have when selling Kiistone to tradespeople, is that I've been there myself. I hate, no disrespect to them, but I hate marketing people. You know, if somebody rings me up telemarketing while I'm at work, they only have to say hello in the wrong way and the phone's down. Not interested in emails that aren't directly from my suppliers or customers. You know, we can literally be up to our necks in trouble. And if I'm there with Kiistone going, this will solve all your problems, it'll almost be like, look, we've become resilient at being in this position, you know, until, yes. And then the other day, conversely, completely different industry, I ended up speaking to somebody, a much bigger company, who just went, I get it, I want it right now. This is going to give me a competitive edge over my competitors. And you just go, I thought that's how everybody would get it. So it's another one of those things where at the start, you may think it's the greatest idea in the world. You might have everybody in your circle going, this is the greatest thing in the world. Do your research. Because the other thing is, it's like you said, Phil, when you've done your research and you've got that bag of knowledge, it also allows you to dip into it at different stages of your development, different stages of your marketing to specifically target what's going to make people sit up and listen. Because just because that's what makes you sit up and listen, you can't expect that the person next door or down the street is going to be the same, because it's not. And this was the thing where I really started to grab control back, was where I went, that marketing won't work. I'm a tradesperson. It won't work on me because I'm not going to listen to that. It doesn't. We've got to find another way. And then I think certainly if you're dealing with somebody that goes, no, it will, it's like, right, tell me why. Or are you willing to back up the reason why you think it'll work by not getting paid until it does? And most people then will do a runner, or if people aren't listening to you when you know you're right, you've got to be brave enough to go on your own and go a different way, because that's the way you succeed. Because if you go the way that everybody else has always gone, you're going to end up in the same place as everybody else. So what the hell are you changing?
Yeah, that's right. And you've heard me say this before, but I think what happens is people start to do brand development marketing way too early, because you almost have to, when you're in the early stages of a business, a startup, and it's new and you need people's attention long enough to explain what it is, as we said, not just buy this, but this is why, this is what it does, and this is why you should consider using it, and all the relative complexity in that communication. You almost have to go up to those early customers one by one and almost like get them by the lapels. All the woke people are freaking out now because it's violent, but pick them up by the lapels and shake them and say, just listen, give me 5 minutes of your attention. Because if you do it in the general social media online world, there's a billion flaming TikToks every second. There's a billion posts on Facebook every second, and all that goes with it. And you almost like have to go down to the dirt. And I know you've heard me say this. You have to go down to the dirt, get into the dirt with those people and communicate with them, build that know, like, and trust almost on a one-to-one basis. Yeah. But what often happens is, if there's a need for it, which I do seriously believe there is in what you've described and what you're doing, then quite interesting, because over a certain period of time, and it takes a lot longer than we all think, but over a certain amount of time, the ball does start to get to the top of the hill, and it almost can teeter on the top of the hill, and then it starts to just teeter over, and then it starts to go down the hill, and relatively quickly you can find it zipping down the hill. Word of mouth kicks in, a couple of big customers who are telling other people how great it is. And before you know it, and then of course you've got the new problems of the entrepreneur, handling the bloody scale of the thing that you've done, because you can't handle the demand. It never ends.
That's it. I mean, people talking about like reaching your mountaintop. It's not, it's more like walking through the lakes.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's peaks and troughs all the time. So if you're planning on stuff just getting easier one day and you're laughing, that's not ever going to be your journey, but yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is, though, and going back to the woke generation and stuff, and we've got to be careful how we say this, that another serious problem in my industry is that young people coming through are few and far between. And I did the academic route. I've got my higher level degree from a good university, and I have to say it is a fantastic paper aeroplane. It's made with beautiful paper. It goes a long way, much to the delight of my mum and dad. But being on the tools gave me something different. It allowed me to be hands-on. It meant I wasn't in an office. It means my environment changes daily. But the advice that when I'm lecturing in colleges at the moment, trying to get more people into the industry is, don't have aspirations about where you want to go, but don't not look at the enjoyment and the almost like the rich pickings that are there to be had at the start of your journey. So if you go onto my building site as an apprentice, don't expect me to give you a power tool or ask you to do anything complex anytime soon, because I don't want to be taking you to A&E with 3 fingers missing or part of my client's bespoke ceilings just fallen down because you've screwed through a pipe. But all around you, you'll have experienced people that are going to give you tidbits, banter, pearls of knowledge. You know, I see it all the time. Apprentices come on site and they look at the old school and they're like, what does this old fella know? And God, he talks a load of twaddle, and oh, you can't say that anymore. And it's like, well, no, yeah, thankfully a lot of stuff is changing and it has to change. But you've got to build up your bag of tricks. You know, you've got to gain your experience, and you'll get anywhere faster by having advice from people that have walked that walk, you know. And it's no different now when I'm trying to find new ways of solving the problem. You know, you've got to be humble, but the best thing to do is to ask people a question, because most people want to tell you what their experience is.
Yeah, true.
You know, and just take it on board. It's not that you have to do it their way or absorb it all, but if you get to pick a couple of good tidbits out of it, then that's the way. And the big thing for me now, Phil, is making more and more connections to people. That the best way of gaining any work in any environment is through recommendation. So, you know, now getting into larger companies that want to adopt Kiistone as their payment system, as their protection, having somebody that opens the door for you and puts you in at a higher level and introduces you as being somebody to trust it's invaluable, you know. And the other thing is, being in people's homes, you may be walking in there as a clock in, clock out, it's a job, I'm getting paid, fair enough, but start to get into your mindset that you're working into somebody's personal space, into somebody's security. So if you abuse that trust and don't do a good job in their home, you're directly affecting how that person is mentally and, you know, financially. And you've got to, the quicker you take responsibility for that environment and the fact that you want to deliver a good job, the better your reputation will be, the faster you'll get paid. You know, I'd like to think you'd use Kiistone, you've got that security, but what's wrong with setting a higher standard? Don't be the same as everybody else. That's how you differentiate yourself. And the thing I'm saying to the students coming through the colleges and stuff like that is, if you want to earn this big money that you've got as the dream heading, you can do it in the way that other people have done it, but why not do it better? You know, if you're the best at what you do in that area, and you can, I'm not saying be silly with your prices, but you can always put your prices up, because people will pay more for a better level of service, you know.
Yeah. I've got a question here actually from Jonathan, and he said, if you know what you know now, would you have still gone on the journey?
Yeah, because people say to me all the time, why didn't you make it in football? And it depends how far, you know, to some people I made it.
Just for those that don't know, just give us a quick potted history of that, because there's a lot of people won't know that, obviously.
I was lucky enough to play for England at schoolboy level. I was lucky enough to play for the Great Britain team and go to things like the World Student Games, and I was lucky to be a part of an international British team. That we were the first international team to play in Libya when Colonel Gaddafi was still in charge, when his son was trying to open the country up and bring tourism. Before it all went pear-shaped again. But
yeah,
I got to do some amazing things. But ultimately, it's like anything. If the drive's not there, if your passion fades because it's not what you thought it was, you will never make it. And I'm seeing it now with certain players in the current England team, and they're talking about the mental struggles they're having. It's a different perspective. Just because you've got all the money in the world, it's still a caged environment. You can't just go and do whatever you want. And somebody's probably always got a camera in your face recording you doing something stupid. You've got to live a regulated life. And one of my best friends, as you know, is involved in the England team, and he's a very disciplined guy. And when you talk about would you not do certain things, I look at it now in that I'm a far better person for the bad experiences, because I've had to find a way of mentally coping with them and become more resilient. Whether Kiistone works or not, I've got all of that now in my mental toolkit to be able to make a better job of whatever comes next. And that, for me, those are real entrepreneurs that failed all those times, managed to pick themselves up and went again. Now I'm not saying I could do that. I'm being honest with you, because it's taken a heavy toll on my family and stuff like that. And for me, people think different things. I think for me, this is my one chance of doing something that could really make a difference. And the problem with having aspirations to do certain things like play football at a high level and stuff like that, you do get a bit dreamy and romantic, and it's no different with this. Yeah. I would love to leave a legacy with Kiistone that really makes a difference to people and helps people. And the other thing for me is that every turn that I've come up against with Kiistone, where it was a chance to take an easier route and maybe have a call centre full of people, or to spend a bit more money and automate the system so that when you use Kiistone, in the end, it'll purely be between the tradesperson and the customer, or the small business and the main contractor. And what makes it fair is you use it properly, you put more detail into it, you are completely in control. I'm in my office, I'm not passing judgment on the way you run your job or how the job goes. If the job goes wrong, it'll be limited to the small stage of payment that you've set aside for that part of the job. So your liability is contained, but also the fact that for that small stage, you're able to print a report off. It'll give you a full breakdown of all your communications to that stage of the job. And what you're doing then is you've literally got your report that justifies the way you've behaved. So there's none of this he said, she said behind closed doors. You know exactly where you stand. And for me, Phil, everything that I've really tried to do with Kiistone, going back to what Jonathan said, is, would I change anything? No, because Kiistone's evolved from what I originally wanted it to be. Whether it eventually succeeds, however big it becomes, a big player might come in and copy exactly what I'm doing and be on telly next week, and I'm sat there going, "Oh, well, that was a belting idea that some big brand."
Yeah, but that's all. That's the entrepreneurial journey, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've actually got another question for you here, actually, from Susie. And Susie says that her daughter wants to go into construction, but she doesn't know if it's particularly good for women nowadays. Has anything changed?
Yeah, I'd say 100%. Things are changing for the better. Would I? I've got to be careful how I say this. I was about to say, would I have a building site full of women?
This is what we've come to, isn't it? This is what we've come to.
I'm just digging my hole, aren't I?
Yeah.
But yeah. Why would I say that? Because I honestly think that my experience of women in the industry, they've always got something to prove. They're more diligent. They take responsibility for themselves. I'm not saying the lads are bad. We've got some obviously some great blokes in the industry as well. But will you have to be thick-skinned? Yes. And no, I'm really sorry, I'm not a woke person. If you come onto the site and, no disrespect, you're a little weedy lad, then you better get strong pretty quick, because it's not an office environment, and things get said because we're allowed to say them. And you said it before. I love metaphorically dangling somebody out of a window to get my point across. But it's what I'd certainly say is I've been so lucky to work with a lady called Hattie Hassan and her partner Micah. They run Stockcox, and they've recently established the Register for Tradeswomen, and they've been pioneers for years to really establish women in the trade industry. And recently, because of getting on the One Show, that's just exploded, and they're doing phenomenal things. They've got On the Tools coming on board with them, and my wife's job is she's legacy manager of the Women's Euro football tournament this year. And in the last 2 years, they've increased the participation of women in football nearly threefold. And I truly believe that Hattie and Micah and the Register for Tradeswomen are going to do exactly the same. And to be honest, if young people coming into the industry, male or female, aren't taking it seriously, you don't deserve to be there. It's a dangerous environment. I mean, touch wood, I've still got all my fingers, but I'm not going to say I haven't come close to serious accidents over the years, but it comes down to your focus every day on site. It comes down to your experience that you learn early doors. And I think now, I mean, the Special Forces are a prime example of how, for the first time ever, women are being allowed to try out for the Special Forces. And, if you're physically strong enough to do something, then do it. You're bound to be mentally capable, because as far as I'm concerned, a man and a woman, I mean, you could argue the toss on who deals with organisation, pressure and all this lot, but just treat everybody the same. There's more tools about now, there's health and safety. So it's like, however big and strong you are, you shouldn't be lifting a boiler onto a wall, for argument's sake, on your own, or carrying a plasterboard on your own. So we've got a skills crisis, and at the moment, the statistic is that 4.3 million homes in the UK don't meet the government's basic standard for living. We haven't got enough young people coming into the industry. A quarter of the current industry of tradespeople, skilled labour, are over the age of 50, which means in the next 10 years, we'd expect to lose a quarter of the industry. And the sure as heck isn't that many people coming in to fill that void. So I'll do anything I can to get young people into the industry, but I want to paint them a realistic picture and say, you've got to graft. Certainly for women, yes, you've got to be thick-skinned, but I'd also say, enjoy when you prove yourself, you become part of a team that really cares about you and respects you. And no disrespect, most of my family are ginger. If you walk on site and you're ginger, you're going to get called something. If you walk on site and you're probably a bit overweight, you're going to get called something. I get called something every day. And I'll be honest, when people stop calling me something, it's probably when I start to worry, because then they're trying to be politically correct around me. So,
I noticed you didn't say anything about bald.
Thought it was too easy, to be honest. What I was thinking was, I'm chuffed a bit you haven't polished it today, so that I can see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing, you see. Of course, it's the northern thing as well, isn't it? The banter. But based on the thin ice we've been on in the last 10 minutes, John Wright is actually is actually and entering onto the ice with us. I bet they would be a lot tidier. So thanks for that, John, and good to see you on this thin ice with us. But it does, I mean, joking apart, it does very much depend on. It's just about having. To me, it's just about having the right people and the best people doing the jobs. 100%. It doesn't matter what colour, sight, right, ginger, bald, short, bare, female, foreign, what. It's just having the right people in the right places doing the right jobs. And of course, then, and not creating the positive discrimination, which then to me is a kind of that's kind of defeating the object then.
Well, how do you help people become better if you can't? I don't mean, don't get me wrong, there's a world of difference between constructive criticism and bullying. And in the past, I've seen it myself, there's situations that can arise where you go, no, that wouldn't arise anymore, because people will go, this can't happen. But you haven't got to walk up to somebody and think, I can't say that because of their ethnicity. I can't say that because she's female. You know, if somebody's about to get hurt, you've got to be able to say straight up, you're about to get hurt. This is why, you know, you muppet. But
my first day at work, in terms of bullying, back in 1833 when I started work, in my first day of work, my mum had very kindly, just to say, I didn't go to university, so I wasn't 25 at the time. I was probably 16, 17. And on my first day of work, my mum gave me a packed lunch, and she gave me a pork pie. She knows I love pork pies, so she put a pork pie in my lunchbox. I went up at lunchtime, opened my lunchbox, got my pork pie out, bit into it, and somebody got into my pork pie, scooped all the meat out, put it in the bin. So I ended up eating basically not a pork pie, but a pastry holder. So yeah, not the worst bullying ever, but I did have a little, and then there were all sorts of things happen thereafter. But of course, you know, things have changed a lot since then, and that's the good thing. One thing I was going to ask you before we close up was, you obviously did this, and you've kind of mentioned it slightly as part of the conversation. You kind of did it a little bit as a side hustle, didn't you? So one of the things I often say to people as a general statement, and this is obviously smaller business, maybe rather than entrepreneurs, but you can these days do things as a side hustle. So you keep the money coming in, but do something else, and you build it and build it and build it until the point where you can walk away from the main thing that you were doing, and the new thing that you're doing becomes the new mainstream thing. When you look back, was that something that you think was a good thing that you did? I'm thinking obviously keeping the finances rolling. Or was it a double-edged sword because of what you said about being totally focused and being able to keep on top of everything?
I tried it both ways, to be honest. I made the mistake of not giving enough time to it when I was on site doing my normal building job with my other company. But by the same token, I then ended up doing a half day on Kiistone, a half day in work, purely to pay my mortgage. Barely paying my mortgage, should I say. And I got into massive financial difficulty because the other thing I'd say is that a lot of the debt that I'm certainly still wallowing in, that can't just go away. You know, that this is the baggage that I'm going to carry with me until Kiistone is successful. I got talked into a lot of that by not saying, right, hang on, and I just need to cool it down a bit now. It's all going a bit fast. It's more than I can cope with in terms of funding. What proof have I got that turning the corner is going to happen quickly, that justifies me spending more money? if you haven't got the money, just stop, and you should, until you're at the stage where it's ready to start making money for you. You shouldn't ever put yourself in a precarious position that you could lose everything. Because I think the other thing is that whether it's with a small business or being an entrepreneur, yes, you've got to take chances, but you've also got to think about your worst day. If your worst day is that everything's just fallen over, but you can go home and pay your mortgage, and worst case scenario, tomorrow you're applying for a job at Tesco's, but the mortgage is covered. Yeah, that's bad. But it's not the same as coming back to your mum and dad's place because you've lost your home and the wife's left and taken the dog and God knows what, It's like you say, as a side hustle, I just think if something's special enough to capture the imagination to take off, it's going to happen at some point, and I used to kid myself that, oh my God, everybody's out to steal my idea, and it could still happen. But I promise you now, nobody will have thought about it like I've thought about it. Nobody will know where to take it like I'm going to take it to places if I get it going. And it happened the other day, I told you about it. I had a CEO of a company pepper me with questions in quite an extreme way, Dragon's Den way, the other day. And apart from nervous giggling at him, I was able to answer every one of his questions, because it takes a long time to find all the edges, to fill all the holes, to make the mistakes that give you the answers. You can't expect to have them straight away. So if you bowl straight into something, unless it's very simple and can be produced quickly for a cheap cost, and it's returning you a profit very quickly, you've got to have it as a side hustle, because otherwise you'll undermine everything else that you've got going on in your life, in my opinion. So just the hardest thing in the world is to keep your fire burning, but be realistic about how you get to the next stage.
Yeah, and to your credit, to be fair to you, to your credit, you've not mentioned the fact that just as you were kind of setting out on the journey, or you weren't very far into the journey when something called a bloody pandemic arrived, which I know you've not mentioned to your credit, but I can't imagine, well, obviously I was kind of around part of it, but I can't imagine for a minute that things would have been quite so challenging if people hadn't just basically switched off for 2 years.
I'm probably going to say something quite controversial now, but being successful in business is about coping with those things. And it's really harsh, but the faster you come round to the attitude that people say they care, but do they really care? And it's like, no disrespect, bad things happen, loved ones pass away, financial things happen. But the crux of it is you got to get the job done, and it's like with people on site with me, we're unfortunately really thick-skinned. I've lost loved ones and gone into work the following day because that's what works for me. I'm not saying that should be the way for everybody, but if I need you to do that job and you don't roll in, you are having a direct effect on my life of not getting things done. Now, I don't mean that in terms of you shouldn't have time for that. But what I am saying is you can dwell on the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, or you can dust yourself off and go, I've got to work with this situation, because the faster you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, the better you're going to be as an entrepreneur, as a business person, as a successful person in life, to be honest. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't have empathy and you shouldn't care, but you have to appreciate that life will always go on. And that's what makes you a problem solver, is take care of the people that are around you in whatever the situation is. But if you're going somewhere, you got to figure out the path for yourself, however crap it is, I guess, sometimes.
So
pandemic, no pandemic.
Yeah.
You don't know if it had been more successful or not. So what's the point in?
Yeah, no, exactly. So somebody did actually ask me in an interview, I was doing a marketing interview. I was actually the person being interviewed for a change. And they said to me, you know, how would you describe your career overall since you kind of got into work? And I thought about it, because it was just, I didn't prepare for it or anything, and I just said, overall, it's been being like at the Somme.
Showing your age now, mate.
I am actually showing my age. In fact, I was actually at the Somme. No, I wasn't really. And before anybody starts, I'm not being horrible to people who were in the First World War and blah blah blah. But actually, but it has been, and it is like being at the Somme. There are bullets and missiles whistling around you. Some explode and knock you off your feet. Some whistle past your head and graze your left ear. But there's always, like you said, it's uncomfortable. And any kind of journey of ambition that has ambition or aspiration at the center of it, you're going to have missiles and bullets and God knows what whistling around you and landing at your feet throughout the whole journey. And I just wonder to what degree, I don't want to sound like an old codger now, but I probably will do, but I just don't know to what degree the youngsters coming through, and I include my own kids in this, you know, how entitled are they? Do they really appreciate how tough it's going to be? We've had it, without digressing on the topic of the show, but we've had it so good for so long. And now that petrol prices are going through the roof, cost of living's going through the roof, we're not used to it. You know, people refer back, and I remember this as well. People refer back to the 70s when there were power strikes, and you know, I can remember sat in my mum's living room with candles all around us because there was guess what? Rail people were on strike and coal people were on strike and all the rest of it. But it's been such a long time that I think the vast majority of people now have never known those times. So I'm expecting that they'll really struggle to adapt.
I think. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. Some of my heroes, you know, I go back to the special forces lads that I've heard speaking all that lot, and they're all doing motivational talks and positive and da. And it's like, don't kid yourselves that every day is like that, because it's not. I can give you all the positive advice and all this lot. Tomorrow I could be up to my neck in it, but. It's a good thing in any walk of life to appreciate what you've got and what things make you smile every day. And I lost that for a long while during this journey. And I was lucky enough to have, probably going a bit far now, but I ended up speaking to a friend of mine who's a counsellor who does things a different way. And she kind of tapped into what was the most important thing for me on this journey. And by playing a few quickfire question and answers, we both thought that my answer would end up being freedom, because maybe financial freedom or the opportunity to do different things and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And it actually turned out that all I wanted was to be able to enjoy every day. And that actually came down to refocusing me on what makes me smile every day. And I'm lucky enough that it's my kids, my family, however crap the day's been, I pull it around for them anyway. But also, you know, not without getting a bit too mushy, but, you know, enjoy the fact that the weather's better. You know, if the weather's crap, enjoy sitting and looking at the rain sometimes. It's you're in charge of your own head. And in your own head will dictate your success, I promise you, because you can spiral down very quickly. And the more positive you can be about these things, I've got to be careful what I say without getting in trouble with the family. But I've got some young people very close to me that are really important to me that I just think are not worldly wise at the moment and are making bad choices and maybe have had it too easy. Now, does that mean that they can't turn that around tomorrow? No, it doesn't. It's a refocusing. But I just think, you know, you've got to have good people around you and focus on the good things. So yeah, this woke thing that I don't properly understand, by the way, I haven't even got a faintest idea what it means. I haven't got any time for it, to be honest, because I honestly think you learn from mistakes. So if history's been bad, don't destroy bad history, learn from it and move forward. And it's the same now. Yeah, maybe there's a lot of society that's entitled, but maybe when the penny drops, it reinforces how far they've come and how much better they are when the penny drops, and it'll make things better in that way. You don't know, because it's all relative, isn't it? You talk about bullying, and we didn't have social media. I worry about that happening to my kids, but it's
that's a whole new bag of worms, that is. Right, Tim. Fantastic. Listen, thanks ever so much for that, and thanks for being so candid as always. It's what I love about you, but your openness and your willingness to encroach on something nice like me. Maybe that's why we get on so well. So how do people then find out more about you? How do people contact you, connect with you? How do people find out more about Kiistone and what you're doing, and websites and yada yada?
So to take a look at Kiistone, I know it's spelt slightly funny, but it's, I'll be honest with you, it was the only way that we could trademark the name. But Kiistone was really important to me as a name, because it's actually the main block in the middle of an arch that holds an archway up. And that's what I'd like Kiistone to be, is we're in the middle of supporting businesses, tradespeople, and their customers. We want to be there to take that pressure off people. So you can take a look at our website. Now, what I would say is our website and things at the moment are still slightly from the old legacy. So all of this is going to be updated in the next few weeks as well. But to take a look at how things are now, please visit www.kiistone, as you can see, spelled KIISTONE.co.uk. And also, certainly for the lady that was asking about her daughter, I would like to give out my personal email. I don't know whether I should do it.
No, don't do it on here.
Right. I'll give that to Phil.
Yeah, give it to me. Yeah, I'll pass it on.
Any information, any other information, get in touch with me. You can get me at help@kiistone.co.uk. All our information's on the website. It's we're trying to make it more intuitive all the time, so that basically you can just sign up and use it straight away. So please bear in mind that the banking part of the app, you, as the tradesperson, you've got to be validated, so it takes a bit of time to put the documents in, but we'll personally hold your hand through that process, and your money's always protected. So, but yeah, go to the website, take a look, please get in touch, because I will bend over backwards to get people on board and try and get young people involved, and hopefully we can rectify a few issues that we've got happening in the industry at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Tim, and all the very best with it as always. And if there's any justice in the world, then you'll actually get there. And of course, all this pain and frustration will become part of the book that you launch in 10 years' time, How I Built Kiistone from Zero to a multi-million-pound business by Tim Mullock, and then it'll be all worth it, because that's the only reason you've got anything in your book, because you've experienced it. Okay then, mate. Thanks very much, very much indeed for doing that. Appreciate that, and all the very best, and have a good weekend.
You're a star. Thanks ever so much, Phil. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Bye.